Deep in the rural provinces of Japan, there are villages where you won't hear a single child playing. The streets are unnervingly quiet, and the few remaining elderly residents keep their doors firmly shut before dark. If you find yourself isolated in a place like this, you are in the primary hunting ground of a very specific threat. Your objective in this tutorial is to learn the exact protocols required to survive a targeted hunt by the 8-foot-tall entity known as Hachishakusama. The curse operates on a rigid, unbreakable 3-day timeline. We know this because of victims like 11-year-old Yomi, who traveled to his grandmother's village and unwittingly became a target. Once the entity selects a victim, she always arrives to claim them on the 3rd night. Surviving that deadline requires 4 specific physical assets: a room with a heavy lock, a large quantity of purified salt, protective amulets known as ofuda, and a reliable external communication method. Ultimately, survival depends on your willingness to prioritize the physical perimeter over everything else. In the days that follow, the familiar world around you will become your greatest liability. The first phase of survival is threat detection. The initial warning sign is purely visual: an impossibly tall figure, usually wearing a wide-brimmed hat, lurking just behind the tree line outside your home. This visual sighting is almost always followed by a distinct auditory marker. You will hear a deep, mechanical, and repetitive sound echoing from the trees. It sounds like a hollow paw, paw, paw. Once you are marked, the effects are immediate and physiological. Victims report sudden, rigid muscle paralysis, a severely accelerated heart rate, and a terrifying sensation of hundreds of ants biting their skin all at once. If you experience these symptoms, you must assume the people taking care of you are no longer acting of their own volition. The entity actively compromises local allies, manipulating them to subtly dismantle your defenses from the inside. Look for immediate behavioral shifts. In Yomi's case, by the 2nd day, his once doting grandmother ceased all normal household routines. She stopped cooking, she stopped cleaning, and stopped speaking to him, instead pacing restlessly outside his room. To further disorient you, the entity will deploy severe visual hallucinations. Yomi was forced into a dark room, where he perceived a pale woman hanging upside down from the ceiling, reaching for him with blood-soaked hands. The goal of this terror is to induce a state of panic that forces you to flee your secure space. This is why any instruction to step outside your secure space must be treated as a lethal trap, regardless of who is giving it. Understanding why these rules are so uncompromising requires looking back at the origin of the curse itself. Many years ago, a woman lived in this village whose extreme height made her an outcast. The villagers falsely accused her of practicing black magic and eventually drove her into the forest, where she was brutally murdered. Her vengeful spirit now selects a single child, stalks them for 2 days, and invariably takes them on the 3rd night. The children vanish without leaving a single physical trace behind. To counter this, you must begin a physical defense protocol. Do not trust local wards. Yomi's compromised grandmother drew fake symbols outside his door, claiming they would protect him, but they were entirely useless markings designed to lower his guard. This is the difference between a trap and a defense. Ignore haphazard chalk markings. Your perimeter requires an unbroken, thick ring of purified white salt laid directly on the floor. This diagram knocks out the correct physical setup. Lay the salt in an unbroken circle completely surrounding your resting area. Then firmly attach protective ofuda talismans to all 4 corners of the room to anchor the space. There is a zero-tolerance policy for this boundary. If any part of your body, even a finger, crosses that salt line before dawn, the perimeter fails immediately. Because your local environment is compromised, establishing external communication is your only way to verify what is real. Yomi survived because he called his father, miles away in the city, to confirm that the rituals his grandmother was suggesting were actually tricks. The entity does not reason, and she does not negotiate. Absolute physical isolation inside that salt circle is your only path to the morning. As the sun sets on the 3rd night, the entity shifts its tactics. She will begin a relentless assault on your senses, specifically designed to force you out of that room by any means necessary. The siege begins with an auditory assault. You will hear violent banging against your windows and your door, heavy enough to make the wooden frame rattle and bow inward. If terror doesn't break you, she will exploit your instincts. You will hear the voices of your family outside the door, pleading and begging for help in tones so perfect they are indistinguishable from reality. Yomi survived this by pressing his hands firmly over his ears, sitting dead center in the salt circle, and refusing to acknowledge the voices, while the hollow pa, pa, pa sounds echoed in the dark. If you have external allies, they can guard the hallway or line the exterior walls with amulets, but the final defense rests entirely on your own refusal to leave the circle. You cannot fight this entity. Victory on the final night is purely a matter of outlasting the psychological pressure until the clock runs out. You will know you have succeeded when the sun fully breaches the horizon. At that exact moment, the banging and the mimicking voices will abruptly and completely stop. Exiting the room will reveal the gruesome cost of the siege. When Yomi's parents arrived, they discovered his grandmother suspended high in the branches of a tree, her chest pierced by thick wood. This brings us to the final mandatory step of your survival. Do not linger to investigate. Do not mourn. Pack immediately and evacuate. Even if you survive the third night, the entity never forgets. Return to this village, and the hunt will resume exactly where it left off. Escaping the village secures your life today, but the memory of those voices, perfectly mimicking the people you love, from behind a locked door, is the mark of Hachishakusama that stays with you forever.